Authorities capture an alligator that killed an 85-year-old woman.
Eyewitnesses say the 10-foot reptile dragged the helpless victim into the water. More details on this later in the news. Good evening. I am Ricky Mathay.
And I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. And now for the headlines. Senate ratifies Philippines' entry to Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. bolsters stronger alliance with Australia. U.S. President Joe Biden says North Atlantic Alliance is stronger than it has ever been. And President Vladimir Putin accuses U.S. of stoking global war against Moscow. The Senate has ratified the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which is the world's largest trade pact. Nadine Aguilar tells us more.
The Philippines has joined the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. It is an agreement for free trade between countries in the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. 20 senators voted in favor of the ratification of Senate Resolution number 485. One objected, while Senator Amy Marcos abstained. Senator Marcos is against the RCEP as it may lead to the loss of farmers' livelihoods.
Nais ko lamang diinin na ang aking pangangamba ay dulot ng aking paninindigan hindi bilang kapatid sa kapangyarihan, kundi bilang anak ng legasiya ng aking ama, na laging unahin ang maliliit, ang mga nagsasaka ng lupa at ng lahat ng mga nangangailangan.
Meanwhile, Senate President Juan Miguel Zubiri said the RCEP will provide protection to farmers, including pouring more funds into the agricultural sector.
Marami talaga. From the lack of inputs, the lack of know-how, the lack of training, the lack of modernization of our equipments and machineries, even land concerns. Kasi let's double the budget of agriculture and let's make sure that it goes to the right programs. I totally agree with you. And that's the only way to do it.
With the ratified agreement, foreign products are now free to enter the Philippines. The country will also be able to strengthen exports of goods to ASEAN countries. This will open up better opportunities for Philippine trade, increase foreign investment, and increase employment.
I think it is good for our national interest, Mr. President, because the opposite will make us an isolationist country if you look trade isolationist in the eyes of many foreign direct investors. And coming from the experience that we had in Japan, we were to get Secretary Pascual was with me, Secretary Jokno, Secretary Mina, Sap Anton was with us. Bukang bibig po ng lahat ng Japanese investors was ease of doing business within the Philippines and ease of doing business within the region, because they want us to be the jumping point of their products.
Some senators assured that they will monitor the inflation of the RCEP and will be held accountable in case of any abuse.
We want to see how it will generate employment. These are the experts. You have to help us. So I'm defending you like there was na parang may forever, right? So kailangan tulungan nyo kami. We only rise or fail depending on how the implementers of the budgets we give them are implemented. So we must eliminate corruption. We must eliminate smuggling. We must give money straight to the stakeholders.
Nadine Aguilar, for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Marcos administration is pleased with the ratification of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP. Meanwhile, the National Economic and Development Authority notes that RCEP benefits will not be immediate. Eden Santos tells us more.
o'clock in the afternoon of Wednesday.
Malacanang is pleased with the Senate's ratification of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. This will allow the Philippines to engage in free trade with countries in the Asia-Pacific. The Upper House affirmed on third and final reading Senate Resolution number 485, where 20 senators voted in favor, while one opposed and one abstained. The plenary deliberations were attended by Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin and the economic managers of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. NEDA Secretary Arsenio Balisacan said that the RCEP ratification will generate high-quality jobs for Filipinos that will improve the economy.
By adopting RCEP, we are ratifying RCEP, will be even more forced to pay attention to agriculture, because only then can you fully maximize the benefits that RCEP can give to us. Again, I want to mention to emphasize that we are not the only country asking or inviting others to come and invest into their country. Our neighbors, Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, they are all aggressively looking for the same investors. You know? And if you don't shape up, keep our investment climate, keep our rules of the game clearer, so that they are attracted to come in, then they will simply go to these other countries and will be left out. And I, as an economist, without those massive investments, you can't expect to generate high-quality jobs.
Balisacan admitted that RCEP benefits will not necessarily be felt right away.
The inflation is a short-term thing. The RCEP is it's a longer term. You know, it is when we say that we join RCEP, it does not mean that tomorrow we'll benefit already, or even next year you'll already get a full benefit. Hindi ka, no. Yeah, realistically, when investors look at the country, they look at it, you know, and say, observe it for a couple of months.
RCEP's benefits include help for farmers, as they could get a low to zero tariff for the importation of pesticides, fertilizers, and other farm supplies. They could also receive favorable tariff treatment for the agricultural exports of the country, like pineapples, bananas, and coconut products. For the manufacturing sector, cheaper raw materials will be available, as well as greater access to the international market that could help in improving the country's exports. Micro, small, and medium enterprises, or MSMEs, and professionals will also benefit from RCEP. Eden Santos for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The House Committee on Agriculture and Food failed to convince the alleged onion queen Lilia Cruz to name those behind the price manipulation of onions in the country. Paolo Ramos tells us more.
Lawmakers failed to unmask the protectors of unscrupulous businessmen involved in the price manipulation of onions in the country. This, despite the conduct of an executive session held by the House Committee on Agriculture and Food. Members of the panel are not content with the information shared by Lilia Cruz, who is known as the Onion Queen. Bicol Representative Mark Enverga, House Committee on Agriculture and Food Chairman, says Cruz did not mention who are behind the cartel and the price manipulation of the commodity. Nueva Ecija Congresswoman Ria Vergara says Cruz was very confident when she appeared at the executive session. The lady lawmaker suspects that there is someone big behind the cartel, as well as the price manipulation of onions that reach as high as 800 pesos per kilo last year until the first part of January. Vergara says the panel is looking into other resource persons to identify who are behind the hoarding, cartel, and price manipulation of onions.
Buyas, subalit nakakalungkot, wala masyadong lumabas sa executive session. Hindi ko pwede sabihin kung ano ang nangyari doon. Subalit patuloy yung hearing sa Committee on Agriculture at kailangan mahanap talaga sino ba ang mga nasa likod ng mga nag-hoard, yung itong tinatawag allegedly ni si Ms. Leia Cruz. Bakit siya napakatapang niya? Sabi ko nga nung ibang kabayan parang nakangiti pa. Alam niyang makakalusot siya ulit. Kaya sinisikap talaga namin sa susunod na meeting na talagang makapag-imbita pa ng ibang resource speakers na naiintindihan talaga yung modus nila sa Department of Agriculture.
Vergara added that Congress will also wait for the results of the ongoing investigation by the National Bureau of Investigation and the Office of the Ombudsman against officials of the Department of Agriculture, Bureau of Plant Industry, and the Bureau of Customs who are in cahoots with the unscrupulous businessmen. Market prices of onions are gradually stabilizing following the arrival of imported onions and the start of the harvest season by local farmers. Paulo Ramos for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Sandigan Bayan junked today the ill-gotten wealth cases against former President Ferdinand Marcos Sr. and other co-accused in the case. In the 156-page decision by the Sandigan Bayan's 5th Division, it dismissed for lack of evidence the civil case filed by government prosecutors against Marcos Sr., former First Lady Imelda Romualdez Marcos, Luis Yulo, Roberto Benedicto, Nicolas Tejesa, Jose Tenco Jr., Rafael Sison, Cesar Zalamea, and Don Ferry. The case involved the alleged BHAS loans by the Marcos couple and its cronies from the funds of the Government Service Insurance System, or GSIS. In its ruling, the anti-graft court said the plaintiff failed to prove by preponderance evidence that the properties alleged in the complaint are ill-gotten and / or beneficially owned and controlled by former President Marcos and his family. The United States continues to voice support for the Philippines as discussed between the two countries' defense chiefs. Celine Dorado files this report.
The United States has reiterated its support for the Philippines in its territorial dispute with China. The defense ministers of the U.S. and the Philippines discussed ways to deepen cooperation even with other countries in relation to security in the Indo-Pacific region. According to a readout from Press Secretary Brigadier General Pat Ryder, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin III spoke with Department of National Defense Officer in Charge Carlito Galvez Jr. about incidents in the West Philippine Sea, including a security threat to the Philippine vessel around Ayungin Shoal. The two defense officials also discussed bilateral security talks, including plans to resume joint maritime activities between the two countries and develop a security sector assistance roadmap. The two officials also laid out agendas that could be discussed at this year's ministerial meeting in Washington, D.C. this year. Austin also reiterated the United States' commitment to support the Philippines in its rights in the West Philippine Sea. He reiterated that the U.S. is ready to respond in the event of an armed attack against the Philippines in accordance with the Mutual Defense Treaty. Celine Dorado for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Members of the European Union Parliament have met with the Philippine Senate. The meeting was to expand cooperation in the area of human rights. But the discussion on the war on drugs launched by the former President Rodrigo Duterte sparked a heated discussion. Let's hear more from Mean Corvera.
A heated debate transpired between some members of the Philippine Senate and representatives of the European Union Parliament. Members of the European Parliament Subcommittee on Human Rights are in the country to expand cooperation on the issue concerning human rights. Part of the agenda is to meet with their counterparts at the Philippine Senate. But Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa says he was insulted when one member questioned the resolution filed at the Senate calling for unequivocal support for former President Rodrigo Duterte and to bar any investigation by the International Criminal Court on the alleged extrajudicial killings related to the war on drugs.
Sabi ko, para bang
para bang masyado na itong nakikialam sa trabaho namin mga senador dito. Kaya sinagot ko siya. Sabi ko, you know, Your Honor, if you know your history, we were conquered, rolled and enslaved by the Spaniards for more than 3 centuries, more than 300 years. And now that we have gained our freedom, we have gained our independence, we expect that other countries should respect our sovereignty. So, yun lang sabi ko sa kanya. We hope that you respect our sovereignty. Bakit naman pati yung pa-file ng resolution ng isang senador, questionin pa niya, that is too much of tinkering with our internal affairs. Who is it to question that move by Senator Jingo Estrada?
De La Rosa says he explained to the EU contingent the basis of the war on drugs by Duterte administration where allegedly almost 6,000 individuals have died. But despite his clarification, members of the EU Parliament are not convinced with their minds closed on the matter. De La Rosa says the EU has no right to lecture the senators on the issue of human rights as he accuses them of also violating rights of Filipinos. But the head of the EU delegation denied De La Rosa's allegation. Hannah Neumann, Vice President of the EU Subcommittee on Human Rights, says there was no heated debate, but instead what happened was a critical discussion of the matter.
We had a very fruitful meeting, and I would like to thank the Senator as well as the whole Senate for receiving us so friendly. As you are all aware, the relations between the European Union and the Philippines has always been a very close one.
She admitted that they are bothered by the killings that happened in the country during the war on drugs of the former administration.
That we were deeply concerned about the extrajudicial killings happening on the war on drugs. We see right now prosecution starting, but being rather slow with at least 6,000 people killed in the war on drugs, only 20 cases filed and 3 people convicted.
Senate Justice Committee Chairman Senator Francis Tolentino says the Philippine Senate has explained to the EU delegation the position taken by the Philippines on the ICC probe and requested them to respect the decision of the Philippine government. Tolentino reiterated that the Philippine government, particularly the legislature, is doing everything to act on the allegations of abuse. Although there are no commitments from the EU delegation, the Senate is expecting them to respect the internal decision of the Philippines following its withdrawal of the Rome Statute in 2019. Mayan Corvera for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has welcomed Australian Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Defense Richard Marles in a courtesy call in Malacanang today. Analysts say the meeting is significant since tensions in the West Philippine Sea continue to arise. Randy Bernardino tells us more.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. declares his administration would bolster a stronger alliance with Australia. Marcos' statement comes after his courtesy call with Australian Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Defense Richard Marles in Malacanang today. He also believes the country's future lies in strong alliances and in a united front in promoting the values that are important to the Philippines and Australia. He asserts the visit of Deputy Prime Minister Marles is an important part of the country's response to the recent acts by the Chinese Coast Guard in the West Philippine Sea. Earlier, Defense Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. hailed the Australian government's contribution to reducing the number of terrorism cases in the country. Galvez says he is looking forward to joint patrols and joint training with the Indo-Pacific country.
The Philippines and Australia believe the importance of the collaboration among like-minded security partners to achieve a collective security and defense. That's the word of our honorable visitor. In the region where nations could freely exercise their sovereign rights while pursuing stability and prosperity in the Asia-Pacific and Indo-Pacific region.
The Philippines and Australia are also set to establish a regular defense ministerial meeting to combat terrorism and strengthen maritime security.
We also agreed to explore other possible areas of cooperation, while reaffirming that counterterrorism and maritime security remain as the core pillars of our nation's bilateral defense relations. We reaffirm the need to continue working together towards a common goal of maintaining a free, open, and secure Indo-Pacific region.
We're going to work together to look at ways in which we can deepen the opportunities where Filipino servicemen and women can work alongside Australian servicemen and women. And to that end, we're building upon the training which is occurring right now in Mindanao, but also looking at ways in which we can pursue joint patrols together in the South China Sea, and looking at ways in which we can do more exercises together.
Randy Bernardino for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Turkey has commended the 82-man Philippine Interagency Humanitarian Contingent. The group helped with search, rescue, and retrieval operations for the victims of the massive earthquake. Kim Liana has the details.
The Office of the Civil Defense thanked the 82-man Philippine Interagency Humanitarian Contingent sent to Turkey. According to OCD Administrator Undersecretary Ariel Nepomuceno, the dedication of Philippine representatives from various government agencies, such as the Philippine Army, Philippine Air Force, Metropolitan Manila Development Authority, Department of Health, and Subic Bay Metropolitan Authority is unbeatable. The Philippine Emergency Medical Assistance Team has provided more than 600 patients with immediate assistance during the search and rescue operation. He added that 36 buildings were searched by the Urban Search and Rescue Team, with 4 bodies recovered from the rubble. The first week of February this year saw forces deployed from various agencies to assist in search, rescue, and retrieval operations in the wake of the magnitude 7.8 earthquake that struck Turkey and Syria. The Philippine Emergency Medical Assistance Team is also preparing to return to the country as their mission is scheduled until February 24, and the medical team is expected to arrive on March 1. Kim Liana, for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Office of Civil Defense, or OCD, has inspected areas in Quezon City and Pasig that are within the fault lines. The inspection was made as part of the country's preparation for a major earthquake. OCD Administrator Undersecretary Ariel Nepomuceno was joined by Pasig Mayor Vico Soto, Acting Chairman Romando Artes of the Metro Manila Development Authority, or MMDA, and representatives from OCD National Capital Region, Philippine Institute for Volcanology and Seismology, or PHIVOLCS, Department of Science and Technology, Department of Interior and Local Government, Department of Social Welfare and Development, and Local Disaster Risk Reduction Management in the activity called Walk the Fault. The group visited Batasan San Mateo Road in Quezon City, Canley Road in Pasig City, and even the subdivisions affected by the fault line. The Walk the Fault is part of finalizing the Oplan Metro Yacal Plus, a contingency plan for Metro Manila to prepare for the big one, or a worst-case scenario where a magnitude 7.2 quake would hit the West Valley Fault. The West Valley Fault is one of 2 major fault segments which runs through Quezon City, Marikina, Pasig, Makati, Taguig, and Muntinlupa.
Meanwhile, the Bureau of Fire Protection is tracking the site of the Cessna plane crash at Mayon Volcano. Vin Pasqua tells us more.
A 13-man special rescue force of the Bureau of Fire Protection is searching for the Cessna 340 aircraft that crashed in Mayon Volcano. Starting last night, the search and rescue advance team climbed the volcano for 10 hours to reach the base camp, which is 4,500 to 5,000 feet above sea level. At 4 o'clock in the morning, they climbed steeper parts of the volcano. The BFP Special Rescue Force will continue to operate until the possible crash site is located. PHIVOLCS earlier reminded the search and rescue team to be prepared for any threats such as sudden eruptions and rockfall in Mayon Volcano, especially since it is still under Alert Level 2. A few days ago, debris or wreckage of the Cessna plane was spotted at 350 meters from the Mayon crater. I am Vin Pascua for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board, or LTFRB, has extended the franchises of traditional jeepneys until June the 30th of this year. In its announcement, the board says the decision was reached to allow operators and drivers to join cooperatives and participate in the government's jeepney modernization program. Originally, franchises of traditional jeepneys would have expired in March and later extended until April. The June 30th extension is the LTFRB's latest action. To date, 60% of jeepney operators and drivers have participated in the Public Utility Vehicle or PUV Modernization Program, or LTFRB.
Coming up, UN delegation visits rebel-held region in Syria after the quake. U.S. President Biden says NATO is stronger than it's ever been. And North Korea slams UN chief's unfair missile condemnation. These and more stories from around the world when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Malamig man sa Baguio, pero ramdam na ramdam namin ang init ng inyong suporta sa naganap na Let's Net Together Baguio. Maraming salamat mga ka-Net25 sa masayang pagsalubong sa mga paborito nyong Net25 stars.
Baguio! Kamusta kayo naman? Malapakan!
Maki-Net Together sa sayawan. Maki-Net Together sa kantahan. At Maki-Net Together sa kasiyahan.
Not a game!
Watch Let's Net Together Baguio ngayong February 25, 2023, 9 p.m. dito sa Net25.
Mga ka-PSL, ako di ay sigab dagangon ng Davao Occidental Tigers para sa mainit action sa hardcourt. Tutok lang sa Pilipinas Super League. Ito ang liga ko.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. Syrians have been moved by the faith of a brave 9-year-old girl named Sham. Sham has captured the tragedy, hope, and heartbreak of the earthquake which devastated her war-ravaged country. Trapped under the rubble for 40 hours, Sham was rescued alive. However, her doctors say she now faces the risk of having both her legs amputated. This is because of tissue damage from the crushed injuries. Many survivors of the 7.8 magnitude quake that killed over 47,000 people across Turkey and Syria are now suffering from what doctors call crush syndrome. It occurs in limbs that were starved of blood circulation for too long. It starts with a severe pain in the affected extremity, which can still look healthy in the early stages. The muscle fiber dies and is released into the bloodstream, sometimes causing kidney failure. Patients at first seem to be in good condition before they start to deteriorate. Sham was celebrated for her courage after humming a tune along with her white helmet rescuers who worked for 6 hours to free her from the concrete. Scenes captured in footage have gone viral online.
A UN delegation visits towns in the rebel-held northwestern Idlib province of Syria. Deputy Regional Humanitarian Coordinator David Carden says the needs to help quake victims are huge.
During a visit to Poland ahead of the first anniversary of the Russia-Ukraine war, U.S. President Joe Biden says NATO is stronger than ever. A day after making a surprise trip to Kyiv, Biden commends to his Polish counterpart, Andrzej Duda, the strength of the North Atlantic Alliance.
We have to have security in Europe. It's that basic, that simple, that consequential. So it's the single most consequential alliance, I would argue, maybe the most consequential alliance in history, that not just modern history, but in history. And so I made it clear that the comments of the United States and our allies as part of the commitment is real, and that a year later, I would argue NATO is stronger than it's ever been.
Speaking outside the Royal Warsaw Castle, U.S. President Joe Biden refutes the claims made by Russian President Vladimir Putin that the West sought to harm Russia.
So tonight, I speak once more to the people of Russia. The United States and the nations of Europe do not seek to control or destroy Russia. The West was not plotting to attack Russia, as Putin said today. And millions of Russian citizens who only want to live in peace with their neighbors are not the enemy. This war is never a necessity. It's a tragedy.
Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene claims Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is pushing the U.S. military closer to a global conflict. Greene says via Twitter, U.S. President Joe Biden did not go to East Palestine, Ohio on President's Day, but he went to Ukraine, a non-NATO nation whose leader is an actor. She argues Zelensky is apparently now commanding the United States military to world war. The official also claims Washington's support for Kyiv has been like a U.S. proxy war with Russia that is now becoming more like a U.S.-China war through the Ukraine-Russia war. Greene insists that Biden must be impeached before it's too late. She argues Americans do not pay taxes to fund foreign countries' wars who are not even NATO allies.
President Vladimir Putin vowed to continue with Russia's special military operations in Ukraine. He also accused the U.S. and NATO of fanning the flames of the conflict against Kremlin. RT correspondent Murat Gastiev has the details.
We know that the West is directly complicit in Kiev regime's attempts to strike the bases of our strategic aviation. Drones used for that were equipped and modernized with the help of NATO specialists. Western elites cannot ignore the fact that it is impossible to defeat Russia on the battlefield. They intend to transform a local conflict into a phase of global confrontation. This is exactly how we understand this, and we will respond accordingly.
The president's speech went on for almost 2 hours, an hour 45 minutes. It was given before the cream of Russia's elite, the heads of the government, the ministers, the prime minister, various activist leaders, as well as military figures. The biggest revelation was left until almost the end, and that is Russia suspending its participation. Very important distinction. Not pulling out of, but rather suspending its participation in the START nuclear arms reduction and control treaty between it and the United States that has been in effect since 2010. Vladimir Putin here cited various reasons for it, and that primarily, or one of the most important reasons, is that it has simply lost power. For example, Russian inspections, which are written into the START treaty. Russian inspectors are denied inspections in the United States for all manner of reasons. There is also the fact that the United States, various Western leaders have now come out and they say that they want Russia to suffer a strategic defeat in Ukraine. A strategic defeat is something that very few countries recover from, and that is seen by the president evidently as a very serious threat. Another thing that he mentioned is that the United States, there is information, perhaps intelligence reports, is preparing to stage nuclear tests. After decades during which the world has been free of nuclear detonations, the president has ordered the Ministry of Defense to prepare to carry out nuclear tests, but only if the United States carries those out first. The gist of what he had to say is that relations with the West are now have been torn to shreds. There is nothing to stand on, and that Russia sees through all of this high talk about democracy and peace.
No country in the world has as many military bases abroad as the United States does. There are hundreds of them, and I want to emphasize this, hundreds of bases around the world. The whole planet is stacked with them. Just look at the map. No one counts the human victims and tragedies because trillions of dollars are at stake. The opportunity to further rob everyone, hiding behind words about democracy and freedom.
The Russian president also stressed that Russia did everything that it could to avoid this conflict, the special military operation in Ukraine, but that for years, European NATO leaders, as well as the government in Kiev, which Vladimir Putin believes to be fully controlled by NATO, these leaders lied to Russia for years. They lied and they stalled about Ukraine's peaceful intent, their peaceful intent. They spent those years pumping weapons into Ukraine.
I would like to emphasize that even before the special military operation, Kiev was negotiating with the West on delivery of air defense systems, planes, and other heavy equipment. We also remember attempts by the Kiev regime to acquire nuclear weapons, and they were publicly stating it. The U.S. and NATO were rapidly deploying their military bases and secret biolabs near our borders. During their maneuvers, they explored the theater of future military actions, and they prepared the Kiev regime to be controlled by them, Ukraine enslaved by them, for a big war. And now they are admitting it publicly, openly, and with no shame.
He also says that various nationalist leaders, neo-Nazis, were trained in Western military colleges, were taught how to wage war against the Russian Federation, all with the understanding that this war would happen. That has been the Western plan all along. Vladimir Putin also said that this conflict between Russia and Ukraine isn't between Russia and the people of Ukraine, but rather those that have taken it hostage, and any further increase in the number of civilians killed in the devastation.
We are not at war with the people of Ukraine. I've already said this many times. The people of Ukraine themselves have become hostages of the Kiev regime and its Western masters, who've actually occupied the country in a political, military, and economic sense. No one thought about the people. They were prepared for slaughter and eventually turned into expendable material. The responsibility for inciting the Ukrainian conflict, for the escalation, for the increase in the number of its victims, lies entirely with the Western elites and the Kiev regime.
Vladimir Putin also spoke at length about the social and the economic consequences of this conflict. In fact, most of his speech was devoted to those. He said a very important thing that the people here applauded, and that was that Russia wouldn't repeat the mistakes of the past, that the Soviet Union, for example, alluding perhaps to what the Soviet Union did, which is spent far too much on weapons, on arms, and not enough on its own people, on the economy. Vladimir Putin said that we will spend only within our means. He also said that the sanctions which the West believed would shatter the Russian economy, that didn't pan out. The Russian economy remains strong.
The West has deployed not only a military, informational, but also an economic front against us. But nowhere has it achieved anything and will not achieve anything. Anti-Russian sanctions are a means for their goal, as the Western leaders themselves declare, a direct quote, to make our citizens suffer. That's their humanism.
Numerous times the audience stood up to applaud what the president had to say. One of those moments was when he stood up and brought up a famous quote, and that is that Russia has a historic right to be strong. And the people here again stood up, a standing ovation to those words. The president said again that victory or Russia's future is dependent on the actions of every single person. He said he believes, and the statistics say, that the vast majority of the population is behind the special military operation, behind the course that the government has set. And he also says that it is our historic obligation to see this through.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has slammed U.S. President Joe Biden's visit to Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, calling it a performance piece. When asked by reporters to comment on Biden's trip, Lavrov said it's a continuing performance. He added that the new aid package the U.S. promised Ukraine is part of that act. In his meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, Biden announced a new $500 million military aid package from the U.S. On the same day, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken announced another $460 million aid package to Ukraine. $450 million of which is for military supplies like shells for HIMARS, MLRS, and howitzers, new Javelin systems, and air surveillance radars. It will also include about 2,000 armor-piercing missiles, 4 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, 2 equipment repair vehicles, mines, and night vision devices. Blinken's statement also noted that $10 million would be allocated to keep Ukraine's energy infrastructure running. Accusing both the U.S. and Ukraine of participating in the performance, Foreign Minister Lavrov likened the act to the attempt to save the Nazi regime. He said such attempts are futile. North Korea rejects UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres' call for Pyongyang to immediately desist from taking any further provocative actions. Pyongyang Vice Foreign Minister Kim Song-gyong says the UN chief's statement was unfair and unbalanced. He argues Guterres ignored Pyongyang's right to self-defense by launching ballistic missiles. Pyongyang has fired 3 missiles in the past 5 days, including an intercontinental ballistic missile test which showed its capacity for a fatal nuclear counterattack on hostile forces. Kim, however, insists Guterres' assessment disregarded Washington and Seoul's dangerous joint military drills. He says the UN chief should adopt a fair and balanced attitude.
Up next, Cyclone Freddy kills at least 4 in Madagascar. U.S. authorizes extradition of former Peruvian President Toledo. And Somali forces respond as 10 civilians are killed in a jihadist attack. All these and more when Matanang Agila International returns.
This portion is brought to you by 318 Automart, Arlex Trading and Construction Supplies.
Paano ba lumaban sa mga naglalakihang negosyo kung ikaw ay isang bagong produkto? In the business of fire extinguishers, Reynolds Max is putting out the fire and extinguishing the stigma of being a relatively new brand slugging out with more popular or established names. How would its parent company, WSG Group, get a slice of the market share? We'll find out from Winston Galang, the president and CEO of WSG Group, the company behind the sale of Reynolds Max fire extinguishers in the Philippines.
Reynolds Max pa lang ang una at kaisa-isang fire extinguisher na pwede sa lahat ng klase po ng apoy.
Open for business with Cesar Vallejos, Sunday, 9 p.m. This portion is brought to you by Robic Builders, Quezon City Motor Vehicle Inspection Center.
Powerful tropical cyclone Freddy tore through parts of Madagascar on Wednesday, killing 4 people on the Indian Ocean island. The country's National Risk Management Office says the storm has affected 16,600 people. It brought less rains than feared, but strong winds ripped off roofs of buildings and flattened rice fields and fruit trees. The storm landed north of the town of Mananjary. A risk management senior official says the powerful winds badly affected infrastructure. By daybreak, residents were out on the streets to assess the damage and salvage what they could.
The United States has authorized the extradition of former Peruvian President Alejandro Toledo to Peru for corruption offenses. Peru's prosecutor's office says Toledo is facing crimes of collusion and money laundering. Officials say they are coordinating with the national and foreign authorities for the next execution of his extradition. Estimates from the Peruvian Public Ministry suggest that the procedure could be completed in a couple of months. Toledo was arrested in July 2019. He has been under house arrest at his home in California and guarded with an electronic shackle. In Florida, the alligator that killed an 85-year-old woman on Monday has been caught. What you see on your screen are images showing Florida authorities capturing the alligator. That's the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission staff and Lucey County Sheriff securing the alligator with ropes and putting it in a truck. An eyewitness said the 10-foot reptile dragged the unidentified victim into the water during the attack at the Spanish Lakes Fairways community in Fort Pierce.
Somali government forces respond to an attack on a house in the northern Mogadishu district of Abdiaziz. The attack killed 10 civilians and has been claimed by Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab is a jihadist group linked to Al-Qaeda. The raid took place around 12 noon local time. The government says 3 civilians had been wounded. Al-Shabaab has been fighting the government since 2007. It still controls parts of the countryside from where they have carried out numerous attacks in Somalia and in neighboring countries. In recent months, the Somali army and local clan militias have retaken chunks of territory in an operation backed by U.S. airstrikes and an African Union force known as ATMIS.
Firefighters from the Spanish Military Emergencies Unit battled fierce flames in Santa Ana in Chile's Biobío region. Chile's government says 4 fires are of concern because of their proximity to populated areas in the south-central part of the country. Fires there have left 25 people dead and more than 7,000 homeless since the beginning of February. Although the situation began to improve 10 days ago, the government said some outbreaks were still out of control, but far from inhabited areas. However, last Friday, high temperatures and winds returned. Fires broke out again in Santa Ana. They forced people to evacuate their homes.
A desert bloom triggered by heavy winter rains has carpeted the sand dunes of northern Saudi Arabia. The purple blooms draw sightseers from across the Arabian Peninsula. The desert turns into a relaxing view, which only happens 15 to 20 days per year. A visitor says the lavender-covered area refreshes his soul. He adds that flowers offer motivation for a new life as the beautiful scenery fills him with energy. The so-called paradise makes visitors feel like they are in a painting, making a worthwhile journey.
Coming right up, UN says AI poses serious risk for human rights. Starlink is now live in the Philippines. And Manila is Westlife's loudest crowd at the Wild Dreams Tour concerts. Catch more news when Matanang Agila International returns. The United Nations warned that recent advances in artificial intelligence pose a grave threat to human rights. The bloc calls for safeguards to prevent violations. There have been increasing concerns over AI-guided drones that can kill with no human intervention. AI could escalate a military conflict. UN Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk says he is deeply disturbed by the potential for harm of recent advances in AI. He notes that human agency, human dignity, and human rights are all at serious risk. He calls on business and governments to develop quickly effective guardrails that are so urgently needed. Critics have raised issues such as breaches of privacy and biased algorithms. AI has entered daily life, changing how humans monitor their health with new innovations generated in a matter of seconds.
Elon Musk's SpaceX tweeted on Wednesday that its satellite internet service Starlink is now live in the Philippines. The National Telecommunications Commission expedited the approval of Starlink satellite internet last year. Musk's computer network places low Earth orbit satellites into space to establish an internet connection. That connection is purported to reach even remote locations. Some news sources say Starlink's equipment costs $599 per unit, and connecting to the services is pegged at $99 per month.
German film All Quiet on the Western Front was the big winner at the 76th British Academy Film Awards. The awards ceremony honored the best actors and movies for the past year. In the United Kingdom, Lee Lance tells us more.
Presented by Wilbros Live, nostalgic vibes were felt at the second night of Westlife's concert in Manila yesterday. The whole venue was filled with cheers, which is why this is known as the loudest crowd of the boy band. Shane Fillon, Mark Philly, Kian Egan, and Nick Burns serenade fans who are not only popular with the 90s youth, but also with other generations.
Manila is Westlife's loudest crowd as the boy group ended their two-night concert last night. Fans of the band felt nostalgic as they sang along at the concert. Mia Villa tells us more.
Presented by Will Bros Live, nostalgic vibes were felt at the second night of Westlife's concert in Manila yesterday. The whole venue was filled with cheers, which is why this is known as the loudest crowd of the boy band. Shane Fillon, Mark Philly, Kian Egan, and Nick Byrne serenade fans who are not only popular with the 90s youth but also with other generations. Westlife opened their concert with their performances of the songs Starlight, Uptown Girl, and When You're Looking Like That. The band performed a medley of ABBA songs, including The Dancing Queen, as part of their tribute to the Swedish pop group. The concert also included Westlife's meeting with some of its fans who were brought onto the stage so they could take a selfie with the band. One of them is Giovanni, who is notingly wearing the same Westlife member, Nick Byrne. Giovanni couldn't believe the interaction he had with Westlife on the second night of its concert last night.
I was floating. I mean, kahit maraming beses ko na silang nakapicture, nakasama, interview, it's always surreal. I mean, the experience, the feeling, they never fail to amaze me.
Giovanni says he has been a fan of the boy band for more than 20 years and has attended all the Westlife concerts in the Philippines. He is thankful to Westlife because it has opened up many opportunities in his life. In addition to Giovanni, the fans of Westlife also thank their music, which was the reason for them to continue to support the band. Just like Valerie, who flew all the way from Bacolod, Negros Occidental, and came to Manila to watch a Westlife concert with her best friend Glenda. Valerie has been a fan of the boy band for 20 years, and she and her best friend share who is their favorite member in Westlife.
Galing pa ako ng Negros Occidental sa city ng Bacolod para manood ng Westlife.
Although Valerie has been a fan of Westlife for 20 years, this is the first time she went to the concert compared to her best friend who has seen the boy band for the second time. Westlife fans like Valerie and Glenda are expecting Westlife to return to the Philippines after the boy band indicated that they will be back soon. Mea Villa reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
And to help you go through this week, here's a quote from Rose Kennedy, an American philanthropist. Life isn't a matter of milestones, but of moments.
So let's enjoy every moment.
Learn to stop and smell the flowers.
That's right.
And of course, watch out for Counterpoint coming up next after Mata ng Agila International. But for us, that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Ricky Matay.
And I'm Nina Richie Alago Flores. Again, please stay tuned for tonight's episode of Counterpoint with attorney Salvador Panelo and Chef Claude Tayag. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.